Hey everybody, this is Shane Coyle and this is the Man Uncaved podcast. Before we get into tonight's episode, I just wanted to notify everybody that I have a free online men's group. It's called The Gathering. How you can find that is you go to my Instagram page. That's man_uncaved. The link is in the bio. I make it very simple to join. You hit the link, send you to my email, subject, gathering. In the body, first and last name. You'll receive a link to the Zoom. Come join. It's important when doing this work to be gathered with other men so we all can see our similarities. We can connect to all of our strengths. We can connect to all of our courage and all of the hope that's available there. And again, the idea is that we're learning how to come out of hiding, lower our walls, getting vulnerable, and getting support in the process. It's really important for the healing. Again, Instagram, man_uncaved, link in the bio. It's called The Gathering. I hope to see you there. All right, welcome back. This is Man Uncaved. Of course, my name is Shane. I want to extend just a gratitude, a thank you. If you have been listening, have listened before, just thank you. If this is your first time, well, buckle up, everybody. You're in for a ride tonight. Tonight's episode is Don't Believe Anything that I Say. You are believing your own bullshit. Let's break this one down. For those that do know me, you've probably heard this before. I run this a lot in my groups where I open up with that to anybody who's come into my group, anyone that comes into my private practice. Really, truly what I believe when people show up into seeking help, to seeking transformation, again, recovery, whatever that may be, they are stuck, we are stuck, I am stuck in our own bullshit. And when I'm referring to bullshit, I am referring to our belief system, the BS, the belief system that we keep unconsciously, subconsciously agreeing to. So we are going to, again, unpack this. Let's deconstruct this concept to make it a little bit more, to make it digestible. And again, so you can enjoy this at home. Here we go. So I always like to open up the story again. If this is the idea of man uncaved and coming out of hiding, sometimes I set the stage with myself. I say, here it is. If you're going to let your heart out, then I have to let my heart out. Here we go. And it kind of puts this into a context. As mentioned before, my father was an alcoholic and he abandoned me at 2. He wanted to pursue a PhD in alcoholism and it killed him in 2018. He was more out than in. We did try to repair the relationship when I was 18. Again, struggles for him. And my mom struggles with her emotional availability, although she was there and present. She did struggle with her emotional availability with her own self, her emotional maturity. And as a result, I would be shamed. I would be physically beaten at times because she didn't know how to deal with her emotions. And so as a child who is only emotions for the first formative years of their life, I was emotional. I'm all over the place. I'm doing things that a child does. I'm impulsive. I'm compulsive. So my emotions and my stuff would overwhelm her. In order to regulate, I was shamed, invalidated, and sometimes physically beaten. It's also at that time, as that was happening, I was sexually molested. And as a child, all of that pain was overwhelming. So there was this unconscious pushing away. And I'll talk about this more later. I had to push away the pain as a survival mechanism. That would have killed me. I would have died of a broken heart. So all of that is going on. Now, let's hold that concept. I'm going to put it into a different context. So holding that there, put that on the shelf for a minute. Let's talk about these important parts of a child in this very formative time of their life. One is the child is narcissistic. So when we hear this word, it's a hot word, narcissistic, we have to understand that is a very important part of a child's life as they are developing. This is where the child really figures out the self. They start to know the self. Of course, that's being with a very patient, understanding environmental factor. It's not about being perfect parents. I don't think we're going to be perfect human beings, but good parents, fine parents, okay parents that can maybe have a little bit of patience, understanding for this understanding of this child's development. Another thing that is going on within the child is only emotions. As I mentioned before, there is no intellect happening for the child. Holding on to those concepts, now let's start to get into where these belief systems start to be developed. So I'll use again my story. So the father who has left me. So this idea is, I am worth less than my father's time, and I'm worth less than my mother's time. Physical abandonment, emotional deprivation. And when we talk about emotional deprivation, well, first of all, emotional abandonment is painful. Emotional deprivation or neglect to a child is death to the child. And when we talk about transformation, it really, for me, is coming to the emotional understanding, not the intellectual understanding, because again, what's first in a human being is feelings. We are the feeling entity. We are the emotional being first. And so that is going to be the longest journey that we embark on in our healing, because it's at a cellular level. And if you're in the transformation, if in the recovery, dealing with these emotions associated with these experiences can be lifelong. Some will grieve, will let go gracefully, and some is just going to take a lifetime. That's why I say transformation, recovery is not a destination. It's a way of living and continuing to do the work. Holding on to all these concepts, again, I like to throw a lot your way. There's a lot to jam pack in these episodes. I mean, of course, because we're taking these very complex concepts and ideas and breaking them down. I mean, as humans, we are complex already. To break these down in a 15, 20, 30-minute episode is going to be a lot to sit with and process. So don't kill the messenger, everybody. And so jumping back into this, again, my dad is gone due to alcoholism. My mom, with her limitations and a lack of emotional availability, I am worth less than their time. And again, going back to the idea that I am the center of the world, so it's not my dad's an alcoholic, or it's not my mom is so busy and is emotionally available at 2 years old, at 5 years old, at 7 years old. I don't have that concept. There's no intellect around that. If I am worth less than their time, then I am worth less. Now remember, that is the subconscious, the subjective self, creating this idea of this belief system that I am worthless. Again, subjective self, I am. So I'm identifying that. I don't know that I'm identifying with that. It's so in the rear view. Another thing is you love what you give time to. If anybody wants to do a survey of what you love, just see what you give time to. See what you spend your time on. That's what you love. So if I'm not getting my father's time and or my mother's time, I was also a latchkey kid. Again, my mom had to work 4 jobs. So I was left alone a lot till like 8 p.m. I'm not getting in their time, and what you love is what you give time to. So then I am also unlovable. So I am worthless and I'm unlovable, and I could probably throw I don't deserve anything good in my life. Those are happening such on a subconscious, unconscious level. I'm identifying with those belief systems. I didn't know that I was creating that. I'm not aware of that was happening and going on. And actually, I'm growing chronologically, and that's in the background. That is such in the background. And of course, I created roles in my life. I'll talk about that on another episode, these roles, so I never feel unlovable, so I don't feel unworthy. I would do things externally in my roles that I took on so that I would always get my needs met, the needs of feeling loved, validated, and belonging. And I'll talk about that in another episode. But for this one, those belief systems, and this is what I'm referring to, this is our bullshit. I would self-sabotage based on those belief systems. Let me show you how unworthy I am. And so my behaviors, again, if you know anything about the power of the subconscious, A lot of us probably have watched the movie The Secret, the power of the subconscious, and what we are telling ourselves, our behaviors will match that. Because if it's I am worthless, I am unlovable, I'm just speaking for myself, then I have to match that in a behavior because I actually do not know myself outside of that identity. And it is much scarier, or the illusion is it's much scary, if I'm not that, if I have to let go of that, which is transformation, if I have to let go of that story, it brings anxiety because it brings fear. Because if I'm not that, then the question is open to, well, then who am I? And the ego is the only one that needs the identity. The spirit, the soul, doesn't need an identity. It's the ego needs identity. And the reason why it needs this identity is because it needs to know that it belongs. It belongs in society. It belongs in here. If I don't belong, I'm susceptible to prey. If I don't belong, low-hanging fruit gets eaten. And if I don't belong, then I'm alone. And of course, that's the ultimate wound and fear. Now, the belief system, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, and I would self-sabotage all the time. I've told before, I've come from the recovery. I got into this work because I got clean. I got clean off of heroin. And so what would happen is I would get clean. 30, 60 days. I'm doing good. Maybe I'm not living on the streets. I'm doing good in my life. Behind that, I would have to relapse. And the reason why is I wasn't allowed to do good. You can't do good if you have a belief system about I'm not worthy and I don't deserve that anyway. So I would self-sabotage on my belief systems. So I always talk about, if you're sitting in rooms and sometimes people ask me, what was your drug of choice? My drug of choice was my belief system. That was addictive to me because every time I consciously and unconsciously, mostly unconsciously, subconsciously, tell myself that I am unlovable and unworthy, I'm actually secreting emotional responses of that story. These emotional responses are a chemical we release in our body, and I'm getting high on that belief system. So I would continue to get high on that belief system, which of course gives me permission to keep hurting myself. Keep hurting myself, keep destroying relationships because you can't love me, I'm unlovable, don't you know who I am? So I would destroy relationships, just acting out. And so I would act out on these behaviors because of the belief system that I'm unlovable anyway. See, you're not allowed to love me. And it would give me permission. And if you've been in the rooms before, any of the Anatomy rooms, they talk about a reservation. That was my reservation. My reservation was I had that subconscious belief, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy. And so what I would do is I would continue, it would again give me permission to go and continue my dysfunctional behaviors, continue my hurtful behaviors to myself and to others. So what I would keep doing is I would re-traumatize myself over and over again to prove how unworthy I am, to prove how unlovable I am. In relationships, people leave me, I'm going to go, see, that's because I'm unlovable. And I wanted to keep that alive. This is why in the beginning I say, don't believe me. You are believing your own bullshit. And it's that bullshit that we keep regurgitating in our own self that creates us to self-sabotage. Because we're telling ourselves a story that isn't true. That story was created by a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 2 to 10-year-old. And we keep agreeing to this subconscious story. That is what causes us to self-sabotage. It's not if you're coming again, dealing with substances, it's not the substances. I'm just talking about behaviors in general where we can't show up, where we can't make changes in our life. There is this part of ourselves that wants to keep that story because within that story, there is an identity. Again, I am. Thoughts around that is if becoming conscious of these stories, again, bringing that subconscious to your conscious. start to see this narrative, start to see this belief system, get familiar with this belief system, and start to connect onto the many arms and legs that it shows up in your life. It can show up in relationships. You'll just sabotage relationships. How it shows up in doing and making transformation in your life. It shows up in where you don't excel in your job or fear of excelling in your job. And there's many different legs. And that's the idea, is we cannot heal or fix something we do not see. You need to bring it into your consciousness. If we keep repressing, suppressing, and depressing that part behind us, keep getting in the shadow, and the shadow is what's acting out. It is actually calling for you to notice this part. And my idea is then we can learn a new language. And learning the new language is I am and choose wisely. Because whatever you're telling yourself on a subconscious and conscious level, that you are steering the boat. You are going to match your behaviors and not even knowing that you're doing it to that belief system. So the idea of don't believe me, you are believing your own bullshit, start to get familiar. What is that belief system that you are attached to, that describes, that you are identified with? Once you start to recognize that belief system, start to create a conscious and start a new language, creating new conscious language, changing the language that you don't have to create. And it's basically, it's turning down the volume. You're turning down the volume on that one. We're not going to get away from our belief system. We just have to become aware that it is there. And when it is activated, and the only way we can do that is we put that in front of us. We cannot do anything when it's behind us. And recognizing the many arms and legs, and then changing the language around it. So let me know what your thoughts are. I love this one. Don't believe me. You're believing your own bullshit. Remember, when I'm referring to bullshit, it's the belief system, the BS that you're identifying to. It keeps us stuck in our stories. It keeps us locked in our trauma. Almost the fact that we keep recreating the trauma over and over and over again. So again, let me know, please, if you enjoy these episodes. It really helps out to leave a comment, leave a review, so other people can find it. And if you agree with it, or you think somebody else can, find it helpful to hear some of this so they can help heal and change their life, please share this. This is what it's about, sharing information to help somebody else get some help. My name is Shane. This is Man Uncaved. We need to come out of hiding.